Out. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the HeadSpace for Entrepreneurs podcast. I am your host, Rivers Corbett, lucky enough to be hanging out with cool entrepreneurs from around the planet. And as my promises continue, I have a rock star of rock stars with me today, who is a Canadian entrepreneur. And it's a funny story how we came together and continue to be friends. But before we get started, of course, I want to give great thanks and appreciation for our sponsor, Deepwork Sprints, which is bringing great value to entrepreneurs on a daily basis by helping keeping them connected, but through focused work. Over 100-minute time period each day. I can tell you that I've been a member for 4 months, and it has significantly impacted by me participating in my journey with Cheftorials. So you have to go to deepworksprints.com, use the word HeadSpace if you're interested in signing up, and they're going to give you a crisp $50 rebate on your membership. So we'll just leave it at that. And back to our guest. I'm really pleased to meet Lisa Gareau. Is it pronounced Gareau, Lisa?
It's actually Gareau, like sparrow.
Oh, very cool. Gareau. That's very cool. I love it. Yeah. So Lisa Sparrow, Lisa Gareau. I love it. That's so cool. So Lisa, I'm a big fan of LinkedIn, and Lisa and I met on LinkedIn, connected, and she's a lovely person and responded very favorably to have conversations, discovery conversation. And our first one was she was on her way to help her daughter in school. And so we look, Lisa, and on the real life situation, we met in her van.
Yeah, you know what? And I forgot that's where we met. That is hilarious.
Yeah,
on the road.
On
literally.
the road, yeah, we were in her van. So we met and had a great conversation. And Lisa's a true entrepreneur doing really incredible work in the event space. And I want to bring her on because, one, of course, I'm in that space also, but the way that she's approaching her business model is very, very interesting. And so let me just do a little bit of an intro, Lisa, and then we're going to kick into the conversation. So Lisa's been in business for over 35 years. She's been planning and promoting events with purpose-filled businesses and community organizations. And that's the nugget I want to talk about. She started her business in 2008 and Candy Event Consulting. And it's all about supporting those that do events. And again, she believes in the importance of planning from a place of clarity and purpose. And there's a great bio of Lisa in her LinkedIn profile. And she spells her last name Gareau. It's obviously in the promotional piece that you have as part of the entry to this. But welcome to the HeadSpace for Entrepreneurs podcast, Lisa.
Thank you so much. Yeah, fun to be here.
Yeah, it's going to be a great journey. So I want to go back to little Lisa. I want you to talk to me because like 35 years in.
Are you sure? Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. That's why, by the way, this is why I went on your podcast first.
Yeah. Okay. There you go. Yeah. Well, we'll have to have you on again.
Yeah, we'll keep pushing the edge. So, but you've been in this space for a while and that's wonderful. It really is. So, but what was little Lisa doing before you got in the event business? Because this just doesn't come from, oh, I decided I'm going to be, I want to be a policeman or a firewoman. This is deeper rooted stuff. Can you talk about what you used to do as a little girl to kind of head you in this direction?
Well, it's such an interesting and actually meaningful question for me because, and thanks for the great introduction. It really has been my life. And my parents, actually, my dad was a pastor. My mom was a counselor / woman of power and connection.
Right.
And when I was young, I used to joke actually in my teens how events were truly a family business, and connection was a family business. And I grew up sharpening the pencils and putting out the booklets. And my mom had a lot of, I actually grew up in Saskatoon. And then later on I was about 12, we moved to Winnipeg. Where we were the connection family. And so the idea of sort of little Lisa I don't remember a time that I wasn't part of the team that was putting on connection opportunities. And I call them connection opportunities because they're not just an event. It's like a lifestyle of connection.
Right.
And my parents lived and breathed that through a multiple of different programs, and whether it was a community event or if it was something much bigger than that, they traveled a lot. They lived in different countries, and I just felt like we have just scratched the surface as I started to get older, and we moved from. It would have been Saskatoon, about 12 years old. And my mom had already been running like a monthly women's conference every month that was hundreds and hundreds of women in the Saskatoon Convention Center. And then when I was 12, we moved to Winnipeg, to a small little inner city Winnipeg church. It was like a little rundown, condemned 5 times drugstore. And we were just, like I said to my sister, we're not in Kansas anymore.
I love it.
Nothing like what our life was in Saskatoon. And honestly, my dad wrote his memoirs. You know, he passed this summer at 91, A Beautiful Life. And,
yeah, that's wonderful.
And he wrote his memoirs, and he called me up. He's like, what was that like when we moved to Winnipeg? And I said, I certainly would not be who I am without that move. Like, it was really monumental for me because it opened the doors. And Rivers, you would know this as an entrepreneur, but we've got to fail and fail fast and fail long and over again to really find our feet and find the confidence and that competence in what we do. And I feel like I did that very, very early in my life, where I was given that freedom to fail and love sort of the work I was doing, whether that was a concert in the park or kids clubs. And so when I say that I've been at this 35 years, I turned 50 this year. And
welcome to the club, by the way.
It's thank you.
It's a great decade. Yeah.
And a great year to turn 50.
Yeah,
I was going to travel and
Well, you're still going to do that, I think.
There you go. It'll come someday. But I really love when people ask about sort of little Lisa, or what was that like when I was younger, because it was so foundational for me on what, not just how to plan events, but what connection truly means between people that care and that community matters.
What did you, I mean, you know, I'm 57, so we're on the same journey of school and so on, you know, so what do your parents do? Question comes up. I remember I asked my kids that question once, what they used to say. And so what did you say when you were asked that question? So what do your parents do?
I would say that my dad was a pastor, and my mom, she called herself a counselor, and it was so much bigger than that. You know, I think for any of us, and especially for entrepreneurs, I think sometimes we struggle with a title.
Yep.
And I don't care what business you're in or what industry you're in. When you start to pigeonhole yourself with a title, and I would say this with my parents too, it almost diminishes what's going on, like that daily sort of contribution and what does it look like? And because the joke actually was, Rivers, the joke was for a lot of years that every single year I was wearing a different hat. Right. So I was in media for a while, and I was in marketing for a while, and I was a publisher for a while, and I was running trade shows, or I was, it could be anything. I was in development. Like, it was just like a million different things, but it was like, I would just give everything to it. And then I'd be like, and it wasn't a squirrel moment. It was like, where am I wanting to dig in and learn more and challenge myself. And when I knew that. I knew that. Yeah, all my life, it's been like that. Yeah.
Yeah. That is so cool. And I love the fact that you were given permission to fail. I've always, I always say and I don't always say, I don't even know why I say that, but I have been known to say that unfortunately the B students and the C students are not given the same level of accolades as the A students. in school, the A students, the brainiacs, and so on. And yet reality shows the more intelligent you are, in most cases, the more you suffer and struggle because you can't deal with those failures. So I think that's a wonderful gift that your parents have given to you. So so off you start into Candy Event Consulting. Now, where did that name come from?
Well, you asked.
That's a goofy name. Come on.
Well, you know, and I have heard that so many times, and I tell you, like when we do our, and I say we, as sort of the world of entrepreneurs, or if you're starting some venture and you're trying to pick a name, and I had done a lot of market research at the time, and knowing all the hats that I had been wearing all this time, and I went through a pretty difficult time through a divorce, and I moved from when I was living in Edmonton, and I moved back to Winnipeg after 15 years in Alberta. And it was time to put my stake in the ground. And it was very, very important for me to really get this right, or, you know, quote unquote, right. And what was the name itself was very interesting because I had this name for a couple of years already before I decided this was it. Nice. And I went to this amazing designer friend of mine. He's a world-class designer. He became a friend of mine. He wasn't at the time. We hadn't known each other very well. And I came to him and I had this other name, and it was because of all my market research. I'm like, people, for them to take me seriously, I need to check off all the boxes. I need to be Navy, you know, and sort of some kind of Navy logo. And I had picked this name, Contrast Consulting. And Rivers, you'll laugh at this because it was like the thing I sketched.
Lisa.
I like to draw things out, and it was like 4 navy square boxes, and then it was 1 dark purple square box, and that was my differentiating factor. And I was just like, you know what? I want to be taken seriously in this industry, and blah, all that stuff we say to ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And I went through this. What a beautiful friend this guy was, and he still is. And he's like, he says to me after this whole conversation about my navy square boxes, and he's trying to be super gracious. And then I pulled out this notebook out of my bag, and it was like all these bubbles and colors and flowers and polka dots and stuff. And then he just leans back in his calm and quiet way, and he said, "So is this Lisa or is this Lisa?"
Yeah.
And yeah. I said, well, this is totally me. Like this, you know, the cover of this notebook was totally me. But I said, no one's going to take me seriously. Yeah. And I said, and I have this name. I said, I've had this name for a couple of years because I was going through this really, you know, divorce is always, you know,
I know it. I'm after 3 years into it now. So I get it.
Well, and it's so tough because you kind of second guess, you know, really what your values and priorities are and all of that. And going through this with a couple of young girls, and my one daughter was in preschool, you know, when I was kind of thinking about a name for a company, and I bring up sort of this hard time in my life because Journey, my daughter, she was, everything was fun.
Whoa, back up. Sorry. What did you say your daughter's name is?
Journey. Well, one of them's Journey and one of them's Sharia.
Okay, so let's talk about Journey's name. Only because we're talking about a journey. Was she given the name because your reflection on your journey? I think this is so cool. I mean, having the name Rivers, I'm always attracted to unique names. Yes.
Yep. So Journey, the name Journey for me meant that life is a journey. Yes. It's not the destination.
Yeah, I love it.
And the idea of her first name is Lauren, second name Journey. She's adopted the name Journey, which is
good for her.
Anyways, there's a whole other funny story about that. But so Journey was that kid that it didn't matter what was going on externally or in our family, or we were moving and there was all this stuff going on. And I just said to myself, that's the life I want, where we have to get the stuff done, right? And as a single mom, like I have to feed my kids and make a living, and I've got to make sure the house is clean and all those sort of, all the things we've got to do. But at the same time, having this playful, brilliance and just this attitude to life that anything's possible, and what a lovely moment we're having. It's actually the name of my magazine, and that's why it's called Moments, is that how are we leaning into this moment? And yes, getting things done as an event planner, we have a lot of details, and especially now. But at the same time, how do we add this playfulness and the joy and the passion to what we do?
Here, I'm sending you a virtual high five. I love it. I am. And it's not to disrespect your other daughter's name, by the way, but you just said that and I'm like, oh, this is so cool. So keep on going. Keep on going on the journey.
I was just saying, the whole idea of Candy was that as much as people might not take me seriously, and Rivers, maybe you felt this in some of your adventures, but I have been told in the past to stop telling event planners or people that event planning is fun. And my conversation in that moment is saying, if we're not passionate about what we do, if we don't truly enjoy and find joy in the work that we do, we might be in the wrong profession. And I don't care if you're an event planner or if you're whatever you've chosen, if you don't have that light and you're able, because it's a tough life, like getting up every day, especially through COVID for a lot of industries, it's a really tough go. And if we don't wake up and say, this is what I'm meant to do, or this is what I'm called to do and what I love to do. And for me, in my context, if I'm not having some fun and talking to great people like you, or working with clients that have some pretty amazing things on the go, that for me, that's the joy. And so choosing Candy was a bit of a risk in the sense of how are people going to perceive the work I do as, at the time, an event planner and someone that would help with campaigns around those events, and now solely as an event coach and strategist, that there's still the hard facts and the meat and the spreadsheets, and you know what I mean? The meat, like basically I say, you do the meat and potatoes of your work. And if you're familiar with the book, The E-Myth, they talk about how you're very strong technically. A lot of people are really strong technically, but how do you attract people to what you do? And I say Candy is that sweetness and the irresistible colors and variety that we can add to the heart of your strength technically, that will actually attract people to what you do, which obviously helps you stay in business or your nonprofit to stay profitable. There really are the pieces of what I feel Candy is. It's not just fluff. It's about we've got to make this attractive and fun for our clients or our donors.
Well, you do. And, as you're going through what you just said in these so-called experts, I remember when I used to own a bunch of gourmet burger restaurants, and people would have all kinds of advice for how we should run the burger restaurant.
Right.
And my business partner and I, our pat response was, "That's a great idea." We would just,
thank you for the thought. Yeah, exactly.
That's a great idea. Jim Rohn, the great I wouldn't even call him a great he's not a great motivational speaker, he's a great speaker. He'd always say, the answer was, that's interesting. And then he'd move on.
Right. And honestly, no disrespect to people that run their businesses that way. And I actually teach at the Mount Royal University here. I teach risk management. So I for event planners.
Yes.
So I totally get the place for it. And what I had to recognize, Rivers, is that it is that. And so for me, I've just got a different track and a different way of showing up.
Yes.
Not just in the events industry, but for anybody planning any event anywhere. That's what I say all the time, because it's like, for those people like little Lisa, all those years ago, that I had no idea this was where my career was going to end up, but that they need support, and they need, they're not at all incompetent, but they need a community of people where we can have these very real conversations and get over the speed bumps of what we're trying to do over and over again. And I have just taken that on. That's my role. And I love it so much. Yeah.
And isn't that great? And good for you. And you know what? You would tell your children to do the same thing. It's that you would give the children the same freaking advice you're giving to yourself right now. And it's one of the things I always say, and I do say this all the time, is that when people say, you know, what are your thoughts on that? My pat response is, well, what would you tell your children to do? And they always have the right answer.
Yeah.
They always have it. So let's dive into your business. You know, I promised it was going to be, or I didn't promise, I said probably be 25 minutes. It's going to go over, Lisa. Okay. It's going to go over.
All good. I'm just with you, Rivers. Whatever. Okay, cool. Yeah. Wherever we go.
Because now we're going to touch into Candy, and tell us about the value proposition that the sweetness of Candy wraps itself around.
Well, the conversation I've been having, I think more specifically in the last probably 4 or 5 months, because people are a bit confused on what to do with their events. Whether you're running a business and you're running these events yourself, or if it's a nonprofit team or a volunteer committee or a board, a lot of the calls I'm getting are really about what do we do? And that is the heart of Candy, is that I have so many years of, and I say hard knocks and joys because it has to go hand in hand.
Sure it does. Sure it does.
The learning that happens through making mistakes, but also the pushing the envelope and seeing what's possible, especially now. So our value proposition, when I talk to people, they might ask me for a proposal, for example, and I'm giving them a proposal around the coaching services that we offer here at Candy. And they're like, how do I compare apples to apples? Like, I've got these other, you know, event planning proposals, and then there's you.
Right.
And how do we compare these? And I say, you actually don't, because what I do is it's different. And it is, I call it a kind of a full wraparound as you are either planning this event yourself or you are hiring an event planner. What I say quite often, and this has come from working with a lot of, as an event planner, working with a lot of clients that they get halfway through their planning and then things are kind of going off the rails, or they're not sure why something's happening. And I'm like, well, if we could dig a little deeper, you know, here's the issue, you know, you do that diagnostic, and then you start to see where you could have set things straight or set up a strategy or some kind of a process that you're streamlining what you're trying to accomplish, but you're also able to, I actually say all the time, it's become my mantra, but that events need to be affordable and repeatable and scalable. And so when I'm working with a client, I'm taking on an advisory role.
Right.
And so we do Strat Sessions with, 20 people or 2 people. It doesn't really matter, the size of your team or if it's just yourself. But the value proposition is that we can help you stay off the rocks. I use sort of the lighthouse. You would appreciate that sort of analogy, but we use this the picture of a lighthouse and the boats on the water, and your event and your event team is the boat. And you are, you've got a direction you're going, you've got a team that's all hands on deck, and we are helping to keep you off of the rocks. But there are times where I actually come alongside and I'm sitting with the captain, or I'm on that boat, and I'm actually helping to refine the system so that you're able to get where you're going faster, but also with your team management or with your processes, having more cohesiveness with your team, or maybe your processes are clearer for people. So it's very different than an event planning role, but I feel like it's so essential. And it certainly has been a job, or my work is to educate people on what an event coach or strategist is.
Right.
And I call myself
I want to talk about this. This is interesting. You led this. I had 2 questions in my head, and I'm saying, which one am I going to go with first? Which one? And you led me down the path with the one. Yeah. You're the doctor. How do people know you exist? Like, that's pretty crazy. You're the lifeline. You keep the boat off the rocks. And that's a pretty focused niche, not a lot of competition, in my opinion anyway, do it to the point that people are calling you, people are contacting you. So for our entrepreneur friends, and look, this is a journey you've been on, okay? We understand that this didn't happen one day you put out your shingle and people called you. How do you get people to turn around and start to call you? Is it new people calling, or is it customers that you might have done business with years ago? How's that whole process work for you?
So because I'm all about community, and I guess the easiest way for me to answer this, keep showing up, number one.
Right. Yeah. That's fair.
There have been many, many days, and I'm basically writing the playbook. And I don't say that maybe in an egotistical way. It's just like there's just no path to this.
Right.
So I do feel like I have been building the way to really work through with a team, a clear strategy. I've done a lot of, I guess I should back up. When I started in 2008 with Candy Event Consulting, I knew right off the bat that I had a lot of friends in nonprofits, or they were starting businesses, and I went for a lot of coffees, like a lot of people do, to share.
Yes.
They want to pick your brain, and it got to the point where there was such a need for me to meet with boards, or they're just like, can you help us? Like, just understand where to start, or what's the problem here, or how come these volunteers are leaving? And so right at the beginning, I started something called Candy Academy.
Okay.
And the Academy was my way of educating people that I am there not just for them and their event, but that as a conversation, they need to be there for each other.
Right.
And so the way that I have found sort of my way into a niche, I guess, or being known in the niche, is that I'm working with a lot of, or some organizations that work with people like admin professionals, or fundraising professionals, or entrepreneurs like you, or like there's so many pockets of communities out there, if I could say, like Startup Canada.
Yeah.
Not that they're partnering with me yet, but it's this, there's people out there that are part of communities, and we're not taught in those communities how to connect well with an event, or how to use an event as a marketing tool, how to get your team mobilized around an event that will sell product, or will raise money, or whatever your event needs to do. And so when I'm talking to the boards of these organizations, or a company that has maybe a larger team that's running events year round, all of a sudden it's making sense to them. They're like, where have you been? Because it's not just about hiring an event planner. It's about backing all of that conversation up to saying, how do we connect well? And how do you mentioned this right off the top, Rivers, but my passion is that we're looking at what is the purpose of your business, or your organization, or your group? And then how do we infuse that purpose in every connecting point? And I talk about a connecting cycle. So we talk 12 to 18 months. And so where are your events hitting? Where are you doing a campaign? Where's your communications team really heavy, on whatever, a summer something?
Yep.
So how do we infuse all of that incredible purpose and passion into every connecting point in a way that makes sense for your clients or your donors? Because not everything's going to land, right?
Yeah, it's not. And so it's not, that's right. And so that's why the lighthouse analogy works so great there. Let's keep focused in on the beam of the light. So did this focus, did this specialty, talent, where people are losing their purpose, and then you start to put it in, or did this kind of evolve over time?
I saw, when I talk about sort of when I first started 2008, and honestly, I moved back to Calgary 2010.
Right.
And I'm not sure how much you know about sort of the economy here in Alberta, but that
I know it's not very good right now. I know that.
Well, now it's tough too, for sure. Yeah. But 2010, when I moved here, events already were shrinking because oil and gas had taken another hit. And a lot of the big events, glamorous events, were not being run in the same way. And I kept saying to my friends when I moved here, or as I was making friends, for such a time as this, That's why this company started.
Right.
You know, that's why I put my stake in the ground, because people were losing money, losing donors, struggling with their businesses. And so in some ways it's my heart to not just connect, but to help. And I help in the context of where my skill set is, I guess. Like we all, you know, if you find your flow, that's usually where you're going to find it.
Yeah.
By really attaching this passion for something. And I often say that there's this vibrancy in a community when events are running well. I don't care if you're a nonprofit or a business, but there's, when you're able to gather and connect in meaningful ways, there's a vibrancy that happens in a community and a diversity that I don't think happens, you know, if we all stay in our homes or we're not, you know, right now we're isolated, but there's ways that we can connect with each other. So I think it grew quite organically from my history with my family and just friends that were really struggling with their events, and just checking off the boxes wasn't enough anymore. Right. And I can do that. I've been doing that all my life. But where I see the transformation and the ideas and the innovations that start to happen, it happens in these very real conversations where we're talking about, who are you as a leader? How is your company showing up in the community? How are you collaborating with others in your space and opening yourself up to fail, to, you know, explore a new way of doing something, to not just saying we've always done that and it doesn't work, or, you know, we've done that before and whatever. Like there's so many conversations that are far deeper than sort of the checking the boxes and the spreadsheets that I feel will be transformational in the world. And, and honestly, when I wake up in the morning and a lot of days where I'm like, holy smokes, like events they're hurting right now, and people in the events industry are hurting right now. And we're really, some people are being very innovative, like what you've got going with Cheftorial. We had that conversation, you know, a couple of weeks ago, where you're just putting yourself in that space of the event coordinator that's trying to find something that is going to connect well with their guests or their donors or customers. And then there you are. Like, I think we are in a time right now that we, Rivers, I don't want to say innovate or die. You know, that's sort of where maybe I'll buy a Harley someday and I'll put that on my on my license plate. But it really is more.
That's a big license plate for a Harley, by the way.
I suppose, and my sister's the motorcyclist in our family, but I do feel like, you know, there is this point that we have to, like with Candy, I feel like if I don't do this differently, who will? Like how? And I'm so free with information because I feel like I will continue to innovate. I'm going to continue to grow and create and connect with, you know, the sky's the limit. Right. And I feel like if I can give people that heart where you don't have to hold your cards so tight to your chest, or you don't have to be perfect all the time, or you don't have to, sorry, I'm getting on my soapbox, but it's like good. we don't have to, especially in the event planning world, we don't have to be perfect to be amazing. Right. We have to be real, and we've got to be there with our clients, and we have to say there could be another way, and let's have that hard conversation. Right. And people have cried in my Strat sessions because they're like, or they're, you know, they're knocking heads. And then I did one with a board and in-house team, and there were 20 people around this boardroom table, and it was tense because there's years and years of stuff that they have not been agreeing on, and going through the strategy session and saying, okay, everybody, we are all here, you know, not just on the same team, but we have something to accomplish. And it is time to get past, you know, ourselves and our, I don't want to say everything's petty, but get past where we're stuck. Yeah. So that we can do the work, and so we can show up and we can connect well with our donors in a way that we're not just faking it or putting on a show. People are so sick of that right now, and I just feel like there's so much more that's possible.
I want to know, how do you get the lawyers and the accountants on the boards to come around with that? you
know, it's a lot of fun.
Good answer. Good. And that would be the one that I would be expecting. Yeah. Because that's a perfect return to what we started with. That is so cool. It's such a lot of fun.
It's not fun. I'm not saying it's fun because they're frustrated or in pain or hurting financially. Like if you've got, you know what I mean? Like it's not fun in the sense of, but what is for me so satisfying, and it really leaves me feeling like this is what I'm meant to do, is we get to the end. Strat session can be 5 hours or 8 hours or whatever we decide it's going to be. Usually it's a half day.
Right.
But we go through a process of questions, and at the end of sort of the questioning and the carefully digging, and some intuitive kind of feelings I get through these sessions, we're able to unveil where some of those pain points are, or where is it that there's been some miscommunication. And I'll stick with it for a bit, because we need to, what I say is that I'll kick up the dust. It's not about sort of sweeping it under the rug anymore. We got to kick it up and feel it. Yeah. And then once we felt it, we can start finding solutions around how to get past it. And I'm not saying that sort of a strategy session becomes this magical thing where everyone's hugging at the end and now we're all, best friends and we've got, everything planned and now the event just happens magically. That's not what happens. But I tell you, we, especially in a industry like events, where a lot of it is what people see sort of on the outside, as opposed to what they might not know about sort of the internal workings of a team. Or like I've seen people lose volunteers because they've just exhausted them. Or I've seen people not make money at events because they're coming at it too hard, or their ask is old fashioned and it's not resonating with the people in the room. Like there's so many pieces of this that if we truly took the step back, I honestly believe that there will be ways to simplify, to allow ourselves the grace, maybe to say that's what we did, but you know what, let's just kind of build something that will be manageable. Or maybe this is our time to scale, and we can just take this and if we had these support systems in place, XYZ, whatever they are, we could actually double our revenue, or we could now be worldwide, or whatever sort of scaling looks like.
Well, I've said that I like the word often too. You said that earlier and I caught on to that. I've often said that this is a great time in the history of mankind, as there has been other times like this, because it allows us to all start from the starting line again in a way that is acceptable to the people that are there with you. It's like, okay, we're all here and there's no baggage being brought. So that's the second last thing I wanted to say from this. No, actually there's three things. That's the third last thing. The second last thing is it's a Friday afternoon on this interview, and one of my favorite drinks is a vodka tonic. And I am going to be mixing a double vodka tonic to cheer you, my friend, because you're pretty spectacular. I love how the impact you're making on the world, let alone the event planning world. So keep doing that magic. And the third thing is, how do people hang out with you? They're leaning in. It's okay. How do I find? Where is he? What you doing? I want to say hi. Get out of the stuff rambling on. Lisa, tell me how I get in touch with you.
Well, thank you for that. And thank you. I have my coffee in hand, so I'm just going to caffeinate to celebrate.
Okay, cool.
Maybe works. I should put that on a t-shirt.
Yeah, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. Well, I'm in the eastern part of the world, so I'm 3 hours ahead of you. So that allows me to talk like this at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Exactly. And I haven't quite hit noon, so I think I'm okay just to have one more coffee before I hit the afternoon. So thank you for that. I just actually updated the website. It's candyconsulting.ca. And in some ways really simplified it as well. I've been working with a business coach this year and really working on my working on how does Candy show up and how do people understand what we do and why we do it and all that other good stuff. So you can find me at candyconsulting.ca. And I do run workshops mostly for free. I've got a new series called Candy's Short Guides to Learning. And that's an online 1 hour, it's a virtual Zoom. I don't say it's a webinar only because I want you to come and participate. I want a conversation, and anyone that comes on a virtual workshop with me now, they know that I'm going to be having maybe some uncomfortable silences when I ask a question, because I want to hear from you guys. I want to know what's going on out there. It's really important to me that we continue this conversation. And so anyone planning any event anywhere, I work with a lot of in-house and do-it-yourself teams. So please connect with me. We do, from the business side, I do coaching packages. So they're 5 months long where we are on a coaching call. I do, like I've been talking a lot about, our strategy sessions. And those can be a half day or a full day. And then I also have an online mastermind that I'm just launching this year, which actually was soft launched about 1.5 years ago. And everyone's like, why would we go online? And why would we have these conversations on Zoom?
I know.
And I'm like, I didn't know at the time, but again, for such a time as this, it just feels like it is absolutely the right thing. That
why would anybody want to learn how to cook online when we?
I know, exactly. And I feel very strongly that the masterminds. Some people don't understand exactly what a mastermind is, but it's basically you have 8 to 10 planning peers in a room facilitated by myself, and I am bringing on other facilitators. But we are in a conversation for an hour every week where you can actually pose your challenge. And as a group, we start to find solutions. And it's not just about conversation. It's about choose one thing that will help you get over this speed bump this week. Like, it's a very, very real time. It's called the Ready Room, and that you can be ready for anything. So that's, I guess, that would be the easiest way. Just jump on the website, send me a note through there, and I'd love to chat with you guys.
This is a question from our studio audience. Rivers, you have a question for our guest. Yes, I do. That's a lot of activity. What's one of your organization hacks?
To stay organized?
Yeah.
I really, you know what? I guess it's just, what I find is if I'm not busy enough, that's when I kind of sit on my butt and I'm like, oh, just, whatever, wander around the house. So for me, actually, I did start something this summer, Rivers, because for anyone in any kind of event role, this year has been upside down. And I was saying before we went live how summer was a real valley for me. I lost my dad, and a lot of our contracts came to an end in kind of March, April, and trying to really figure out how do I dig deeper into the coaching work. But the idea of, and the question, I just totally lost my thought because I was in the valley. Oh, how do I stay organized? Got it. Okay.
Well, I'm glad you remembered it because I didn't.
Oh, so funny. How do I stay organized? So what I did, hilarious. This will not be edited out because this is reality.
No, that's right. That's right. I don't do any editing. It just goes.
Just go. Well, I appreciate who you are, Rivers, and that this could just be a great fireside. So how do I stay organized? So summer was really a really downtime. There was not a lot going on for me sort of in the client world. But what I started was something called the Strategic 7. And I picked 7 people in my world that were creating movements of some kind. They were creating hope in the world, purpose in the world, bravery in the world, empowerment for their organizations. And so I was like, I approached them and I said, I want to start like this. I want to coach you, and I want to do a strat session, leadership, and connection, sort of leadership strat session with you, and do the coaching. And I just built this program and started working, because for me, staying organized is that I've got to be in motion. Right. And I think a lot of us get so much in our head that it's hard to, hard to stay organized. And I find that being busy isn't necessarily that's not the problem. Busy work might be the problem, or things that aren't lighting you up might be the problem.
Right.
So I find it quite, I don't want to say easy to organize my schedule, but because I'm so laser focused on where I want to be and how I want to make a difference,
right.
It feels like I just have to make sure that I'm blocking time for myself and being, kind to myself when there's things that are quite busy. But at the same time, really including things in the schedule that, like this Strategic 7 group, I tell you, they have inspired me as much as they say I've inspired them. And I just feel like this back and forth has created a lot of space for me to stay organized, because I'm like, I can't stop now. There's so much more to come.
Well, we don't want you to stop. You keep doing your magic, and I got a ton of more questions for you, but we have to stop at some point in time, and we'll just save that for another conversation. Although on another note, I do have to reach out to you on a sidebar. I need your advice on one question, and so I'll reach out and we can just organize that. But thank you, Lisa. It's been a real pleasure and an honor. Thank you so much for being on the HeadSpace for Entrepreneurs podcast today.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's been a joy.